Today's daf is Lamed Gimel, brand new parak. We are picking up on Lamed Beis, Amud Beis, and we are beginning from Va'akati, which is 6 lines up from the bottom. Lamed Beis, Amud Beis, 32b. Just to reorient a little bit, so remember again, we were focusing yesterday on the shita of Ula. So Ula said that if a person goes ahead and inserts their hands a little bit into the base, I should say differently. Someone who is tamei, who goes ahead and inserts his hands, just his hands, into the Azara, into the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash. So Ula wanted to say that he gets malchus. Right, he gets malchus, he gets lashes, and Ula went on to go ahead and explain why that is. But essentially, Ula's shita is this idea of bia b'miktas shmei bia, that even a partial entry into the Beis HaMikdash is entry, and therefore, again, halacha l'maisa, one will be liable for that. So we're kind of in the middle of that, trying to explain the shita of Ula. So the Gemara says, "Va'akati lo dami mitzor heteruhu." So we'll say, so remember again, we were discussing the idea of what happens if a mitzora on his 8th day becomes tamei with tumas zivus. So remember again, the 8th day is his purification day. Technically speaking, he would stand by Shar Nikanor, and he would go ahead and have the blood applications on his thumb, on his big toe, on his earlobe, and that would allow him ultimately again to go ahead and become tahor. If he becomes a zav, so the issue that comes up, Rabbi is what? That a zav is not permitted to come into the Beis HaMikdash. So we were suggesting the idea that maybe once he's permitted to come in as a mitzora, by definition his tumas zivus is lifted up as well. To which the Gemara says, "Va'akati lo dami mitzora." Va'akati lo dami. The Gemara says you can't really compare the two. Why not? Mitzora heteruhu holo v'ishtri. So you will say ultimately, once the Torah gives a license for the mitzora to enter into the Beis HaMikdash, so once it's been permitted, then it's permitted. Even if what? Even if he subsequently becomes a zav. Tuma dechuyahi la. Tuma dechuyahi laha itchi laha lo itchi. Tuma on the other hand, Rabbi say is set aside. And the truth is, it is not set aside in every single circumstance. It is only set aside in certain circumstances. Amalei Rabbi said, 1 second, Adirabba mistabra. But again, I could say just the opposite. Mitzora heteruhu laha ishtarai ulaha lo ishtarai. But I can make the opposite argument that mitzora ultimately again is permitted. Perhaps it is only a license for tzaras, but not as a license for zivos. Tuma dechuyahi hu mali chad dechuya mali shtei dechuyos. On the other hand, tuma is set aside. What does it matter if one tuma is set aside or 2 tumos are set aside? The Rabbi top of Lamed Gimel, Michlal de tarvayu sfir lahu tuma dechuyehi b'tzibor. The Rabbi say, now what seems to be interesting about this is that both opinions will hold that tuma is dechuya b'tzibor. So we'll say this is part of a larger machlokes. If you look at Rashi, tuma dechuya, Rashi says kolomar b'koshi nitchis etzla dichui ba'alma al yedei nesias avon shatzitz miratza v'lo beheter gomer l'tumas meis itri v'lo tumas zira. We'll say in general there is a following machlokes. When we say, there are 2 different ways to understand, let's say it a little bit differently. If the tzibor is tamei, everyone agrees that what? That the show must go on, right? The halacha is that sacrificial service continues on. If the entire tzibor, or the majority of the tzibor is tamei. There's a machlokas as to the mechanics of that. Some say tuma hutra b'tzibor, some say tuma dechuya b'tzibor. Hutra, what I means, it's as if what? The laws of Tumah do not exist. Heter, if the majority of the congregation ultimately is Tameh, it's as if the laws of Tumah simply do not exist. That's Tumah Hutra B'tzibor. The other possibility is Tumah Dechuya B'tzibor, which means what? The laws of Tumah exist, except what? They're set aside, which is another way of saying they exist, but you're not going to get punished for them now. You have a get out of jail free card. We'll say this machlokis, by the way, is the same machlokis that applies by Shabbos, right? When we say that ultimately, again, that on Shabbos you're permitted to go ahead and violate the tenets of Shabbos for pikuach nefesh, for life-saving purposes. So we'll say, so again, is it Shabbos duchuya or hutra? Is it that it's still Shabbos, even for Sakaras Nefashos, but you're violating Shabbos, but because it's to save a life or potentially save a life, a life-threatening situation, you're not punished for that? So it's Dechuya. Or do we say Hutra? Then no, when it comes to Sakaras Nefashos, what happens, Rabbi Say? That literally again, it's like what? It's like it's Sunday. It's like it's Sunday. The nafkamina between these two things is whether or not one would be obligated to try to use secondary measures, like these grama items, in the course of going ahead and performing some type of necessary activity. So again, the same machlokes by Shabbos applies ultimately by Tumah. So the Gemara says, it seems from here that everyone agrees that Tumah dechuya b'tzibor, not hutra. So we'll say, so let's bring a proof to this. Now remember again, we're looping back now to Ula. So Rashi is Ula, damar bia b'mikzas shma bia. So we'll say, let's go ahead and bring a raya to Ula, who says, remember, Ula's whole shita begins with a concept that if you put your hands, if someone who's tamei puts his hands into the Beis HaMikdash, he is chayiv for illegal entry into the Beis HaMikdash. What we call bia b'mikzas shmei bia. Partial entry is considered to be an entry into the Beis HaMikdash. So let's bring a proof to Ula. So the Gemara says, Le'am v'sayele, kol ha-smichos shahayu sham, kore aleyan ani teikaf l'smicha shchita, chutz mizo, shahaisa b'shar nikanar. Supposed to listen to this. So the Gemara says as follows. Anytime a person does smicha, right? So we'll say anytime a person does smicha, which is the leaning on the sacrificial animal. So kol smicha shayusham, korani alim takeoff l'smicha shchita. So we'll say there's a concept of takeoff l'smicha shchita, which means that shchita must be done. I should say smicha must be done immediately prior to shchita. Now we'll say in order for that to happen, ultimately, as we're going to see, where does smicha have to take place? Inside the Beis HaMikdash. Because as we're going to see, for many karbanos, they were shechted in the north of the Beis HaMikdash, which by definition required entry into the Beis HaMikdash itself. So if you hold take of l'smicha shchita, if you hold ultimately again that right after smicha has to be shchita, so by definition again the person doing the smicha ultimately had to be inside the Beis HaMikdash. Chutz mizo, with one exception, Rabbi say, except for this one. This one is a reference to the carbon of the asham of the mitzora. Why? Shehaisa b'shar nikanar. Ultimately, again, because the mitzora, Rabbi say, he went ahead and stood in Shar Nikanor. Shar Nikanor, Rabbi say, as we discussed, was one of the gateways, but the depth of the gateway itself was not sanctified. So therefore, even a mitzora who is not yet tahor was permitted to go ahead and stand there. She'im mitzora yachol likanis l'sham, because mitzora is not permitted to come into the Beis HaMikdash, ad shemazin alav midam chataso umidam ashamo, until ultimately, again, they sprinkle on him from the blood of his chatas and the blood of his asham. Now both of those are shechted in the north, a good distance away from Shar Nikanor. So as such, again, he had to wait within the width of the entranceway, which was not sanctified, until ultimately, again, the shechita was done and the blood could be brought to him to be applied to him. And we'll say, but what do you see from here? Obviously, in the case of the Metzora, you can't apply the principle of takeoff l'smicha shchita. He obviously can't do smicha on his karbanos immediately prior to shchita, because remember, the shchita is the shchita and the smicha. I should say differently. The Metzora can't enter the Beis HaMikdash. So because of that, again, he cannot do smicha immediately prior to the shchita. V'i amrit bia b'mikzas lo shma bia. And if you hold that at the end of the day, not like Ula, that partial entry into the Beis HaMikdash is not problematic, it's not considered to be entry, which Rabbi say means that what? That even if I'm tamei, I should be able to what? To put my hands on the inside. Then I have a simple idea. Leil yodei v'lismoch. Let the Metzora go ahead and what? Bring the animal to the Metzora. The Metzora is standing in Shar Nikanor. Let him insert his hands into the Azara. Let him go ahead and place his hands on the animal. Do smicha, and then go ahead and shech the animal right afterwards. To which the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yisrael say, so this would seem, why is the Gemara bringing this down? Because all of this is a proof to Ula. What does Ula say? Bia b'mikzas shmei bia, that partial entry into the Beis HaMikdash is considered to be bona fide entry, and therefore again one who is tamei cannot insert his hands into the Beis HaMikdash. Therefore, even though we say when it comes to karbanos take of l'smicha shchita, we like to have smicha done right before shchita, which by definition necessitates the owner of the karban being present inside the Beis HaMikdash. That is true by every karban, with the exception of the asham of the Metzora. Amar Rabbi Yosef Hamani. So this is 1 second. Who's opinion does this reflect? Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehudihi. This reflects the view of Rabbi Yehuda. The Amar Merchak Tzafon. So we'll say this must reflect the view of Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that, remember again, the Asham and many of their Kabbanos were shechted in the north. That the northern area of slaughter must have been a good distance from where? From Shar Nikanor, and therefore Rabbi say we're just dealing with an impossibility. Meaning it could very well be that we hold Teikaf L'Smicha Shchita, and even if we hold Bia B'Mikzas Lo Shema Bia, there's still no way logistically to go ahead and have the Metzora do Smicha immediately prior to Shchita. The distance is too much. To which the Gemara says, I don't understand, what's the big deal? V'le Aved Pish Pish. So what this literally means is, why don't you just make a little doorway then? In other words, if you're not subscribing to the Sheet of Ula, and you don't hold Bia B'Mikzas Shmei Bia, then make a little doorway right by the northern part of the Beis Hamikdash. Let the Metzora do his smicha. Let him put his hands in. Let him do his smicha. Right. Then do the shechita immediately afterwards. And Shalom Al Yisrael. To which the Gemara says, listen to this. So the Gemara says, Abayi v'Rava Damri Tarvayu Hakol Biksav Miyad Hashem Alai Hiskil Eskol Meleches Hatavnis. So this is actually quite amazing. So in Divrei Hayamim, so the Navi writes that when when David HaMelech was helping to create the plans for the Beis HaMikdash, so what happens? He goes ahead and he says, every single part of the plans came from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rashi says over here, Hakol B'chsav, Kach Amar David, Kol Pesach HaZara Midoseha, every entranceway to the Beis HaMikdash and all the measurements of the entranceways, Ubinyan Kalabayis, and in fact the construction of the entire Beis HaMikdash, Nimsar li miyad Hashem, was given to me from the hands of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, ve'in lahosif al cheshbon, ubia b'miktzas lo shma bia. So I'll say ultimately again, so he says over here, so he says every single part was given to you by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Therefore, just to say let's construct another doorway, that is not possible. So Ikadamri, both say there's another version of this. Ikadamri, Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef said as follows. There's another reason why the Metzora can't go ahead and do. So I just want to point out, so far, here's what everyone seems to be agreeing with, which is the Metzora can't do smicha on his asham. Now we seem to have two different reasons for that. One possibility is like what Ula said, that bia b'mikzas shmei bia, that because the Metzora is still tamei before his carbon is offered, therefore again he can't put his hands into the Beis HaMikdash because partial entry is considered to be like entry into the Beis HaMikdash. That's possibility one. Possibility two is teikef l'smicha shchita. That ultimately, again, shchita has to be performed immediately after smicha, which means that smicha has to be done in the place where shchita is going to take place. Because the shchita of the asham is done in the north, and Shar Nikanor is not in the north, therefore, by definition, that you can't fulfill that principle. The Gemara now is bringing up something else. Igida Amri, Amr Rav Yosef, Kolasomich Rosha Veruba Machnis. It's actually very interesting. Rav Yosef says that Rav say in general, when you do smicha, you have to have your head and the majority of your body inside of the Beis HaMikdash. Inside of the Beis HaMikdash. So we'll say, so because of that, again, my taima, what's the reason for this? Kol kocho ba'inan. Ultimately, and we'll say, and we'll discuss this, smicha requires a resting of your weight on the head of the animal. Because of that, what has to happen? Your head and the majority of your body has to be inside the Beis HaMikdash next to the animal. So you will say, we were assuming up until now that if you don't subscribe to Ula's idea of Bia b'mikzas shmei Bia, then there's a very easy way for the Metzora to do smicha, which is what? Put your hands in. Now what we're seeing is, no, smicha is not just about your hands. Smicha is about resting the majority of your body weight on the head of the animal, in which case your head and the majority of your body have to be inside the Beis HaMikdash. So therefore, again, hilchach lo efshar. Therefore, I will say it is impossible for the Metzora to do smicha on his carbon. Why? Because again, one more time, even if you reject the position of Ula and you allow the Metzora to insert his hands into the Beis HaMikdash, hands are not enough for smicha. He requires the majority of his body. So my kasavar. So we'll say, so what does he hold? I kasavar. Rashi says over here, my kasavar, hay tana da'amar kol smichos teikaf l'smicha shchita chutz mizu. So we'll say, so remember again, now what we seem to be saying is as follows, even though when it comes to general carbonic practice, we operate with a general principle, which is what? Takef l'smicha shchita, that shchita has to be done immediately following smicha. That's the general principle we operate with. Yet again, by the asham of the Metzora is going to be the exception to that rule. So my kasavar, ikasavar smichas asham Metzora da'oraisa. So I don't understand. If you hold that smicha, even for the asham of a Metzora, is a da'oraisa, and furthermore, v'tekef l'smicha shchita, and there's another biblical obligation to what? To shecht immediately after smicha, which means that you have to do smicha in the place where shechita is going to take place. So we'll say, if you subscribe to those two principles, number one, that smicha for all karbanos is doraisa. Number two, that smicha has to be done, that shechita has to be done immediately following smicha, which by definition means that smicha has to be done in the place of shechita. If that's the case, and these are doraisas, leol v'les smoch ladja. So I don't understand. If that's the case, that's the Torah mandates. Even though the Metzora is Tameh, if that's what the Torah mandates, then what? Then do it. In other words, remember again, the laws of Tumah and Tahara are laws that are crafted by the Ribbon Shalom. Sivan HaKadosh Baruch Hu says that 99% of the time, if you're Tameh, you can't enter into the Beis HaMikdash. If he tells me that the Metzora does, then the Metzora does. So the Gemara is saying, I don't understand. If you have two halachic established principles over here. Number one, that every carbon needs smicha. Number two, takef l'smicha shchita, then by definition, let the Metzora come in and do a smicha. Dirachmana Amar, because after all, the Torah is telling him, ultimately again, to do it. Amar Abad Bar Masna, Gezerah Shemeyarbe Bepsios. There's a concern here, Abosai. What's the concern? The concern is, even if we give the Metzora the license to come into the Beis HaMikdash, to do the smicha, right in the place ultimately again, where the shechita is going to take place, what's the concern? That he's going to take an extra step. Now, Abosai, by the way, this could even be unknowingly. The idea is, even if he has a license for entry, it is such a narrow license, it is such an exacting license, that if he takes one additional, quote-unquote, unnecessary step, he will be liable. So because of that, even though mid'oraisa, one could make the argument that he has the absolute right and ability to walk in to do smicha, but Chazal apparently stepped in and said, no, we don't want you doing it because there's no margin of error here. Look at Rashi, Shemeyarbe b'psios, la'achar shesamach, because it could be that after he does smicha, he may accidentally go ahead and take additional steps. Im yikarnes psia letzad pnim, yoser mishahayat tzarech nimtza anush kares. See, I will say the stakes here are quite high. That if he goes ahead and takes one additional step, then what is warranted? Then what? There's a chi of kares. So because the stakes are so high, the rabbis came along and the rabbi said, even though you have a biblical license to go in, don't do it. Ikadami. We'll say so. But this, by the way, again, and we'll discuss this in general. Chazal, how could Chazal tell you not to do something that is a biblical obligation? So we'll say, remember again, Chazal have the ability to be mevatel ichiyuv daraisa b'shevi al tasa. Chazal never have the ability to tell you to go against the biblical law actively, but they have the right to tell you to go against the biblical law passively by a shevi al tasa. So here they're telling the Metzora, don't go in. Don't go in, even though, again, biblically you have the license to, because literally, again, there is no room for error. One step in the wrong direction, and you are chayiv kares. Chazal said, don't go in. So the Gemara goes weiter. Ikadam, we'll say an alternate version of this. Amar Rav Adabar Masna, smichas asham metzora daraisa. So we'll say again. So Rav Adabar Masna says as follows. In reality, the smicha of a metzora is daraisa. The idea being that a metzora has to do smicha, we'll say, is a din daraisa. V'tekif l'smicha shchita, and ultimately again we do smicha right before shchita. V'tekif l'smicha shchita lav daraisa. So also Rav Adabar Masna raises a different resolution. He says like this: smicha is daraisa. Smicha is absolutely daraisa, but you know it's not daraisa. Tekif l'smicha shchita. No one says that you have to do the smicha in the exact location where the shechita is going to take place. So we'll say if that's the case, then we have a lot more room. Rashi says over here, Tekef l'smicha shechita lav daraisa, delamash malei v'samach v'shachah b'makom shesamech yishchot. So we'll say again, if I don't require Tekef l'smicha shechita, then by definition, even if I hold that smicha is daraisa, it could be that if what? that if I don't accept Ula's premise of Bia B'Miksa Shmei Bia, then I would potentially have a way for a Mitzora to go ahead and do Smicha, is ultimately again through inserting his hands. Yet we saw that might not work either. Why? Because it could be that Smicha doesn't just require hands. What does Smicha require? Your body weight. And your body weight requires, good morning, Mr. Schoenfeld, your body weight requires ultimately, again, that your head and the majority of your body be inside the Beis HaMikdash as well. So basically, Mara is the Kasha, the Samach v'Shachat, the Pasuk says, this is the shorthand of the pasuk. The pasuk says, "V'samach yada rosh ha'olah, v'nirtza lo lechaper alav, v'shachat as ben habakar." So the Torah juxtaposes these two verbs of v'samach v'shachat. So right, you do smicha and you do shchita. Mas smicha b'tahorin, av shchita b'tahorin. Just like smicha has to be done with a person who is tahor, so to shchita should also be done with a person who is tahor. To which the Gemara says, "V'i amrit lav daraisa." And if you say that takef l'smicha shchita is not daraisa, then b'tmeim nami mishkachos la. Then I both say, then what? Then I could potentially go ahead and find a case where you could have tmeim doing smicha as well. To which the Gemara says, look at Rashi for just a moment. Rashi says, "V'i amrit lav daraisa." Hechi pshita le'smicha b'tahorin, b'tmei nami isa shesomich b'chutz u'machnisa tarlif nev'shachit. So we'll say, if you don't require takeoff l'smicha shchita, then what? So the Gemara says over here, if you don't hold v'i amrit lav daraisa, if you hold that takeoff l'smicha l'shchita is not daraisa, then what? Rabbi say, I can have a case of a tamei who does smicha. How can I have a case of a tamei who does smicha? Rabbi say, forget about mitzora. What can I do? Bring the animal outside the Beis HaMikdash, have the owner do a real smicha, full body weight on top of the animal, and then what? And bring the animal inside the Beis HaMikdash. If you don't hold take of l'smicha shchita, that means smicha can be done anywhere, even outside of the Beis HaMikdash. To which the Gemara says, "B'tmein nami mishkachos la." I'm sorry. V'amrit lav daraisa b'tmein nami mishkachos la. Ela efoch. Rather, I will say, turn around what we just said. Smichas asham etzora lav daraisa. In reality, I will say, smicha is daraisa. Which smicha is not daraisa? The smicha of the asham of a metzora. V'tekiv, so we'll say, look at Rashi for just a moment. Smichas asham etzora lav daraisa. Kasavar she'ino b'chlal hashama shara eino ba'el lahachshu. So we'll say, it could be that eino chinami. And this, by the way, this may be the easiest answer to everything, which is the asham of the metzora is just different. It's just different. It's just in a category of its own. It doesn't have the same halachas as everything else. Therefore, by definition, the Gemara explains that halacha l'maisa, it could just be that it just doesn't require smicha like all other karbanos. V'teikef l'smicha shchita d'oraisa. So we'll say, but yet again, good morning, Mr. Schoenfeld, right? But yet again, it was for your father. He asked me to do that. But yet again, the Gemara says, Ella, so the Ella efoch smichas asham etzora lav d'oraisa, v'teikef l'smicha shchita d'oraisa. So we'll say, if you hold the following, that smichas asham is not d'oraisa, but yet Teikef l'smicha shchita is da'oraisa. So both say, if you take this approach, it resolves a lot of the tension. Einachinami, under all other circumstances, teikef l'smicha shchita. The exception to this rule is asham metzora. So we'll say Amud Beis. Ravina Amar. All right, so we'll say, so the Gemara we'll stop. So the Gemara stops over here. This is kind of where the sugya halts for just a little bit. So just understand, we are advancing a number of really fascinating and riveting ideas. So first of all, we're getting a real education about smicha. And now what we've learned is something very important, which is smicha does not simply mean placing of your hands, but rather, again, smicha means what? Smicha means a resting of your body weight. So now, I'll say, now that we know that, so that's piece number one. Piece number two, I'll say, which is the fundamental machlokis over here, is first of all two fundamental machlokisim. Number one, do we require teikef l'smicha shchita? Do we require that smicha be done immediately before shchita? If you'll teikef l'smicha shchita, then I will say, where is smicha done? It has to be done inside the Beis HaMikdash, right? Because again, remember that shchita can only be done inside the Beis HaMikdash. If you hold that teikef l'smicha shchita is lav d'oraisa, then what? You can do smicha wherever you want, even outside of the Beis HaMikdash, in which case you could even have smicha being done by tmein. Our fundamental question, I will say, is what do we do about asham metzora? What do Asham Mitzora? So the suggestion that Gemara seems to leave off is that it could just be that this is the exception to the rule. Every other carbon requires smicha, maybe even take off the smicha shchita, but Asham Mitzora is the exception for one simple reason, which is its owner can't do smicha. Because also remember again, as we established, even according to Ula, who says bia b'mikzas shmei bia, that partial entry is say even if you reject the opinion that bia b'mikzas shmei bia, putting your hands on the carbon is clearly not enough. You need Rosh Varubo. So that's how the Gemara ends off, seemingly telling us that Asham Mitzora is the exception to all of these rules. Ravina Amar, we'll say, I'm top of Amad Beis. So the Gemara says as follows, Ravina Amar, Le'inyan Malkus Itmar. So we'll say Ravina is going back to Ula. Rashi says, Tel Ketap Rashi Amad Beis. Ravina Amar, Hada Amar Ula Le'el, Mishmei Direi Shlakish B'Bia Miktas. So we'll say when Ula said that Bia B'Miktas Shmei Bia, partial entry into the Beis Hamikdash is considered to be entry. And therefore, again, if a person who's Tamei goes ahead and puts his hands into the Beis Hamikdash, my body is outside, but ultimately, again, my hands are inside. So we'll say again, Ula said that I'm chayiv. Now comes along Ravina, and Ravina says, what am I chayiv for? So Ravina says, it's malchus. Lashes. Not chas v'shalom, if somebody is tamei and goes into the Beis Hamikdash, that is a chayiv misa. So Ravina just comes along and says, by the way, when we say that bia b'mikdash shmei bia, that even inserting your hands into the Beis Hamikdash, if you're tamei, is the equivalent of entering into the Beis Hamikdash tamei, that means from malchus purposes, just to be clear. That's not from misa. Kiyasa Ravin Amar, Rabbi Avo, Le'inyan Tamei Shenaga B'Kodesh Itmar. In fact, again, so Rabbi Avo said, or I should say Rabbi said in the name of Rabbi Avo, that actually what we're discussing over here is a Tamei who touched something that was Kodesh. Look at Rashi for just a moment. L'Tamei Shenaga B'Kodesh Itmar, Lo Yolef Reish Lakish Malkus Mehu Kra Ela L'Tamei Shenaga B'Kodesh, V'Lo Ayri B'Bias Mikdash Kas. So we'll say, so here's what's something interesting. So remember again, Ula quoted Reish Lakish, and Ula said that Reish Lakish learns that a tamei who put his hands inside the Beis Hamikdash, right, is chayiv, gets malchus. Where does he learn it out from? From the pasuk of Bechol Kodesh Lo Siga. He shall not touch anything Kodesh. So now Ravina comes along and says, just to be clear, when Ula says that you're chayiv, he means you're chayiv malchus, not chas shalom chayiv misa. Rabbi Avo comes along and says, no, Reish Lakish, you actually have it all wrong. I should say, or Ula, you have Reish Lakish's statement all wrong. Reish Lakish was actually not referring to someone who is tamei, who inserts his hands into the Beis Hamikdash. Rather, Reish Lakish was actually referring to the following case: Le'inyan tamei shenaga b'kodesh itmar. He was talking about someone who is tamei, who touched something which was kodesh. Rashi, the Gemara says over here, Di itmar tamei shenaga b'kodesh. If someone who is tamei touched something that was kodesh, that was holy in nature, Reish Lakish Amar Loke. Reish Lakish says you get malchus. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Eino Loke, and Rabbi Yochanan says you don't get malchus. So I'll say now the Gemara explains the respective shitos. Reish Lakish Amar Loke. Reish Lakish says you get malchus. Why? Bechol Kodesh Lo Siga. Because I will say Reish Lakish is a literalist. And Reish Lakish is, what does the pasuk say? If you're tamei, do not touch anything that is kodesh. You touched something that is kodesh, you are in violation of the chi of daraisa. Therefore, you get malchus. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Eino Loke. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, you don't get malchus. Why? Hahu b'truma ksiv. So first of all, say Rabbi Yochanan holds that actually that pasuk is referring to truma. The pasuk is referring to truma, specific truma. The halacha telling me that what? That if someone is tamei, they may not touch truma, which I will say makes sense, because what happens if a tamei person touches truma? Truma becomes disqualified. In other words, you have to burn it. There's nothing to do with it. Truma shenitmeis. So I will say, so Rabbi Yochanan understands that it's dafka din in truma. Reish Lakish haikra lahachiuda asa. But does Reish Lakish really use this pasuk to teach me that if somebody is tamei and they touch something kodesh, that ultimately again they're chayiv malchus? Reish Lakish uses this pasuk for something else. What does he use it for? Haimi boile ashara la'ochel basar kodesh. We'll say this pasuk Reish Lakish uses to teach me a prohibition to go ahead and eat basar kodesh if I am tamei. Then I am not permitted to consume sacrificial meat if I'm tamei. So this is actually quite interesting. So Reish Lakish, the Gemara is suggesting, Reish Lakish uses the pasuk of bechol kodesh lo siga. Don't touch anything that is kodesh to what? To go ahead and teach me that if I am tamei, I can't eat sacrificial meat. The itmar, because we learned ashar la'ochel basar kodesh minayin. Both say, from where do we know the prohibition to go ahead and eat sacrificial meat if you are tamei? So the Gemara says, Reish Lakish bechol kodesh lo siga. Reish Lakish has learned from the pasuk bechol kodesh lo siga. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Tani Bardala Asya tum asal tum musam mi bias mikdash. So we'll say Rabbi Yochanan says no. We actually learn it out from a gzeira shava of tum asal from bias mikdash, from entry into the Beis Hamikdash. So we'll say, remember again, the pasuk says va'nefesh asher tochal basar mi zevach hashlam asher laHashem v'tumaso alav v'nichrasa nefesh hahi mi'ameha. So the pasuk uses, the Torah uses the lashon of tuma, ultimately again by a person who goes ahead and eats sacrificial meat while in a state of tumah, and the Torah uses the lashon of tumah, calling al geh b'meis b'nefesh adam v'zaymus v'ois chatas mishkan Hashem timei v'nechrasen Hashem Yisrael ki mei nidalo zarkalav tamei yeh ot tumah sobo. It says tumah by a tamei person who consumes sacrificial meat. It says tumah by a person who is tamei who enters into the Beis Hamikdash. Ma lahalon anash is here. But say just like over there, by entry into the Beis Hamikdash, ultimately the Torah both gives a punishment and an ashara. But remember again, in order to be liable, so the Torah has to state both an ashara, a warning, as well as an onesh. So just like by entry into the Beis Hamikdash, if you are tamei, the Torah gives the ashara and the onesh. Afkan anash v'hiz here. So too over here, if a person goes ahead and what? Eats sacrificial meat in a state of tumah, then what Rabosai? Then ultimately the Torah also gives the warning as well as the punishment. So the Gemara says, Tamei shenaga b'kodesh. But I don't understand something. If you're talking about a tamei who touched something b'kodesh, a person who's tamei who touched a sacrificial item, mid'afka rachmana b'lashon negia, ashara la'ochel, mid'iskish kodesh lemikdash. So also what the Gemara is pointing out over here is something very interesting, which is that if you notice, one of the limudim we had is that from the pasuk bechol kodesh lo siga, what does the Gemara learn? The Gemara learns that a person who's tamei is not permitted to consume a sacrificial item. Now that's interesting. Why? Because the lashon of the pasuk is siga, don't touch, don't touch. So what's the pshat ultimately again that the Torah phrases the lashon of consumption but in the lashon of nigia? So the Gemara says, so let's just read that once more. The Gemara says, Tamei shnaga b'kodesh, so a person who's tamei who touches something that is kodesh, mid'afka rachmana b'lashon nigia. The fact that the Torah phrases the prohibition in the lashon nigia of touching, ashar la'ochel, how do I know that ultimately again it really refers to someone who is eating a sacrificial item, not touching a sacrificial item? Mid'iskish kodesh lemikdash. Ultimately, again, from the fact that we are equating what Rabbi is saying, a sacrificial item to the Beis Hamikdash itself. In other words, the fact that you have that gzeira shava, ultimately, again, of tum'aso, ultimately equates the mikdash, I should say the kodesh, with the mikdash. Take a look at Rashi for just a moment. Rashi says over here, ashar la'ochel, ikar kra, midrash midi iskish kodesh lemikdash b'haykra dashinon mabias mikdash davar sheish bo kares as afas haras kodesh davar sheish bo kares v'hainu achila. So we'll say here's what's interesting. After you have the gzeira shava of tumaso, so therefore again when the Torah says b'chol kodesh lo siga, and if it tells you that if I touch the kodesh I'm chayiv kares, we'll say one thing is clear, which is what? I'm never chayiv. In order to be chayiv kares, you have to be doing something dramatic. The act of touching something that is kodesh, even if I am tamei, is not dramatic enough to warrant kares. Therefore, the Gemara understands that if we're talking about a kares bearing prohibition, it must refer to what? Consumption, achila, and not simply negia. Tanya kabase de Reish Lakish. We have a brisa that supports Reish Lakish. B'chol kodesh lo siga. Right, the pasuk says, don't touch the kodesh. Ashar lo ochel. We'll say that is, and here the Gemara spells this out. That is, we'll say this is the lav for someone who is tamei to consume anything that is kodesh. At to Omar ashar lo ochel o eino elo lo gea. Well, you'll say, how do you know that it refers to someone who's eating? Maybe it mamish just refers to what? Someone who's touch in ours. Maybe B'chol Kodesh Lo Siga literally means don't touch the Kodesh. Talmud Lomar, B'chol Kodesh Lo Siga, Ve'el HaMikdash Lo Savo. So we'll say the pasuk says, you shall not touch the Kodesh, nor shall you come to the Mikdash. Therefore, we'll say, so the Torah is equating these two concepts, touching of the Kodesh, coming into the Beis HaMikdash. So the Gemara says, the Makish Kodesh HaMikdash, Ma Mikdash, Davar Sheish Bo Netilas Neshama. Suppose I top of Lamed Daled, just like entering into the Beis HaMikdash is something that has Netilas Neshama, we'll say kares. Just like entering into the Beis HaMikdash, I will say something that is a kares bearing prohibition. If somebody is telling, I will say, by the way, this goes back before. This is why, remember again, just to link together these sugyas, this is why halacha lemaisa, even if you hold that a mitzora has the biblical license to enter into the Beis HaMikdash, to go ahead and do smicha on his karban, he has a very limited license. And should he depart even one step from that license, then what? There's a chiv kares. So just like again, mam mikdash davar sheish bo netilas neshama, top of lamed dalid, av kodesh davar sheish bo netilas neshama. So the Gemara is linking these two things. Ela mikdash b'chol kodesh lo siga, ve'ela mikdash lo savo. So Torah is equating this phrase of don't touch any Kodesh and don't come into the Beis HaMikdash. Now, not coming into the Beis HaMikdash, or I should say entering into the Beis HaMikdash in a state of Tumah, is a very severe transgression, i.e. kares. So too again, B'chol Kodesh Lo Siga is a kares bearing prohibition. So therefore again, just like entering into the Mikdash is something that has the Tiyas Shama kares, Af Kodesh Davar Shishmon Tiyas Shama, Vi Binogea. Now, if you're going to take the pasuk literally and tell me that the pasuk is talking about someone who's tamei, who touches a sacrificial item, so netilas neshama miika, we'll say, is there such a concept that one would be chayiv kares for touching a sacrificial item? And the answer to that, of course, is no. To which the Gemara says, ella ba'achila. Rather, it must be that what? It must be that halacha lemaisa. Again, the pasuk itself is referring ultimately to achila, is referring to consumption and telling me that if a person ultimately consumes karbanos in a state of personal ritual impurity, then halacha lemaisa, again, a person will be chayiv kares. And we'll say that's the drush of the pasuk. So we'll stop over here for the Gemara. I just want to tell you just one Rambam, just in a few. All right, so we're going to be davening in here this morning. So I just want to tell you just an interesting point in halacha. So the Rambam, just to kind of catch up a little bit, because there's a lot of things flying around over here. So the Gemara says, the Rambam says in Hilchos Maaseh Karbanos, that's what I'll say after we finish Shas, Mir Hashem, I think we're under 2 years. I think the clock is running, so we'll have to make another shir in Rambam, because to learn a lot of these sugis halacha l'maisa is really quite fascinating. So the Gemara says as follows: this is Maaseh Karbanos Parakima Halacha Yud Aleph. Ein somchin ela ba'azara. So we'll say, so first of all, again, we paskin that ultimately again that you have to do smicha inside the azara, which Shabbos says is another way of saying that we paskin Teikif l'smicha shchita. So sama chutz la'azara chozer asayin bifnim. Rabbi say if you did smicha outside of the Beis HaMikdash, guess what? Do over. You have to do it again inside. V'mhaya bala karban. Listen to this. V'omeid bachutz v'hechnis yado lifnim v'samach smicha kshera. Rabbi say interestingly enough, if the owner of the karban was standing on the outside and put his hands inside and went ahead and did smicha like that, the smicha is kasher. So we'll say, but v'hu sheyismoch b'chol kochol. But I will say that's only if what? If again he's resting the majority of his body weight on the actual karban. So we'll say, so again, so here's what's interesting. So number one, smicha has to be done inside the azara, which I will say tells us essentially really the animal has to be inside the azara at the time of the smicha. The owner could be outside of the azara and could go ahead and do smicha, even if he's standing on the outside, provided that he goes ahead and he rests the majority of his weight on the animal. However, ve'in samech ela tahar, v'im samach hatame samach. We'll say now this piece of halacha we're going to get a little bit more into as we go on. V'lechatchila, again, only a tahar should go ahead and what? Should go ahead and do smicha, but yet again, im samach hatame samach. If a person who's tamei did smicha, the smicha itself still works. Now, both say, and that's very interesting because what this potentially does for us is opens the door ultimately again for the possibility of the mitzora But Emir Hashem will continue with that tomorrow. Sheikh Hussein. Good morning, how are you?
Hello, goodbye.
Baruch haba. Are you headed towards South Shore?
This afternoon, yeah. What's your topic this year?
Gun control and halal.
Gun control? Can you send me the memory card?
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be great. I don't know when you had the shear, but I caught up. The partial Biba Mikdash, when you put your fingers in the partway through the. That's the makar for the brisket.
They also, that's also a din in general about what's the kedusha, the chalal of the wall. I mean, the kedushas hamikdash, does it stop on the inside of the kotel, or does it permeate the wall as a whole? That's a major machlokes. Yeah, I'll tell you, you'll appreciate this. Remember, there was a guy in the community who was doing something at Hopkins over here, Schuster.
Remember the name?
See, he's a physician. So he was here with some type of function. So he's on the shul email list. So he said to me, I saw what you're doing on Shabbos. He said, all of us in Talmud, we marry like this. He said, can you say it in Aram